only finishes one of three ways: jail, cemetery, or mental asylum. Now, there's plenty of stops along the way. Got thrown out of home, got divorced, next stop, lost my job, next stop, I'm living by myself.
Hello and welcome to Wellbeing. I'm Jack Hodgins. Today I'll be discussing drug addiction recovery. We are joined by Graeme Alford, founder of the addiction recovery centre 21 Renew. In the 1970s, Graeme was a very successful young barrister until alcohol destroyed his legal career, ruined his marriage and landed him in prison 3 times, the last for armed robbery. 21 Renew was built upon Graeme's own experience in recovery. He is here today to share a little bit about 21 Renew and about drug recovery in general. Hello, Graeme, and welcome to the program.
G'day, Jack. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Graeme. What is the optimal time for someone to seek help with their drug addiction?
Look, there's no optimal time because for everyone it's different. So some people will have a brush from the law. Some people, something like a car accident or something will happen and they'll say, I've got to do something about this. Quite often it'll be their wife or husband or one of their children says, if you don't do something about this, you're out. So there can be a variety of reasons why people will seek help. Generally, it would have been far better if they had have sought help earlier.
Do you think that a lot of people, when they seek help, it's when they've hit rock bottom kind of thing?
Look, that's a 12-step term used in AA and NA, rock bottom. And yeah, certainly rock bottom can be a wake-up call. One of the issues with alcohol in particular is the stigma. Alcohol is such a prevalent substance in society, and it's used to celebrate, commiserate, to party, So, and a lot of people start drinking socially, and then they start to what I call self-medicate. So they use it to relax. They use alcohol to relieve stress, and that becomes habit forming and their tolerance builds, so they need more. And it can get to a point where they become what I call substance dependent. But then there's the fear or there is the stigma of, I can't let people know I've got a drinking problem, or what if my boss finds out? Or so there's all sorts of, and there's also that mental picture that an alcoholic or someone who's substance dependent is that person in the park with a bottle of metho and an overcoat. And nothing could be further from the truth.
You mentioned the stigma there in society for alcohol. Is the stigma worse for those that are on illicit drugs and maybe pharmaceutical drugs?
Yeah, look, it's a different type of stigma. Illicit drugs, cocaine, ice, not so much marijuana, but certainly cocaine, ice and heroin. And even then, heroin's in a different category. Cocaine is almost an accepted substance in a lot of society. And it's very prevalent at the moment. I've probably got 10 clients who've been on the cocaine and the alcohol. Ice is seen as in a very different light from cocaine, and there is a lot of stigma about confessing you're using ice. Heroin is almost in the same bucket as ice, even though one's a depressant and one's a meth. But a heroin user is seen as someone who's, there's a lot of stigma around that. So the stigmas vary depending on society's views. So I've got some fairly successful people who have been using cocaine, and they tell me that it just comes out all the time, at parties, dinner, functions, comes out, and it's almost treated as normal.
How did 21 Renew come to be?
I'd been on the speaking circuit for 20 years and I'd written hundreds of training programs. And about 10 years ago, I wanted to know more about alcohol and substance abuse. I've been going to AA for 39 years now, so I knew all about the 12-step model, but I knew there was more to it. So I went back to school and did a diploma in AOD, alcohol and other drugs, mental health. And as part of that, I had to do 100 hours practical placement at a rehab here in Melbourne. And I'm looking at what they're doing and I'm saying, this is crazy. This is outdated. So I spent the next 18 months researching rehabs, and in particular in America. And in America, there's over 13,500 of them. There's a rehab for every 21,500 people. And that's because they've got medical insurance. And probably 90% of them are based on the same model. It's called a therapeutic community model, overlaid with a version of the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. which they turned into a 28-day program. And they operate on that. The others are generally run by psychologists. And I'm looking at what they're doing in a therapeutic community. People come in, there's community rules. What happens on Monday, whether you've been there 1 day or 50 days, doesn't matter. That's what we do on Monday and that's what we do on Tuesday. And I've never understood the logic of that, because if I've been clean and sober for 25 days, my head's in a very different place to someone who's only been clean and sober 3 days. So what benefit is there sitting the two of us in the same room? It just made no sense to me. So when I built 21 Renew, we have a program that has a start and a finish, and it follows. So, and everyone, when we were doing the retreats up in Bali, everyone started at the same time and we went through together. Even though they were using different substances, their head was still pretty much in the same space as we went. And that proved to be outstandingly successful. I mean, we had a 100% retention rate. And also, when I built it on what they call an inductive learning model, which means I created a number of scenarios. And when we have a session, we break the group up and they counsel a scenario and then come back with their answers, which is far more enjoyable than a deductive program. Do you know that if you have 5 drinks of alcohol, this is what happens to your brain? I mean, that's just boring. And learning doesn't occur. So, using an inductive learning model with scenarios and a bit of CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, and motivational interviewing, I built the entire program.
Would you mind telling us a little bit about your own story?
Private school boy in Melbourne, went to Melbourne University, did law, never wanted to. I always wanted to be a bookmaker, but I got a scholarship in year 12. Did my law course, practiced as a solicitor for a couple of years, then I went to the bar as a barrister. Spent 2 years at the bar as a barrister, and I always wanted to be a criminal lawyer. So I left the bar and opened up my own practice in North Melbourne and started acting for all the gangsters and painters and dockers and whatever. Got way too close to them, so I'm drinking with them every night at nightclubs and broke every rule in the book. And I was drinking 20 or 30 beers a day, 6 days a week. Racehorses, gambling, two-up games, card games, you name it, and I did it. And it all came to an end. I shot off my trust account. I got a couple of years jail. And I was brought up in pubs, mum-owned hotels. So drinking was, if you had said to me, you had a drinking problem, I would have said you're crazy. So I went to jail, lost a lot of weight, got out, applied for jobs as I was still a lawyer, didn't get them, didn't handle a rejection. So I joined the underworld. The hours were short and the money was terrific, but it was never going to last. And in 1982, I was arrested for robbing a bank in Chapel Street, Paran. And the next day, which was the 16th of October, 1982, I was back in Pentridge for the third time. And I can remember sitting there next to the water fountain. I had broken ribs and I was in a mess. And I kept saying to myself, how did it finish like this? And after about an hour, I thought, I've got two choices. I either give up and become a jail statistic or I do something about it. And I decided I didn't want to die of failure. So I did my 4.5 years, worked as a labour and scrap metal yard for a year when I got out. Then I worked at Budget Rent-A-Car. Then I set up my own business and started putting on events. And everyone got bigger. And in the end, I brought out Gorbachev from Russia and Nelson Mandela. Then I managed a rock and roll band in America for a year, 4 young Melbourne kids. We took them over to Hollywood and signed them up. And so I'm a failed rock and roll manager. And I'd written a couple of books and I'd been on the speaking circuit. And I've done a lot of training and business consulting and all that sort of stuff. And I've been going to AA now for 39 years. I'm a firm believer, for me, that's what I need. The last part of the story you already know.
And I think something that comes to my mind just after that is that it is possible to recapture someone's life after addiction.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I've still got the same problem I had 39 years ago. I just know how to treat it. So I'm not recovered. I don't fall for that trap. I've got a lifelong disease. If I don't treat it, it'll get me. And I've seen it happen time and again. And it's an interesting discussion on LinkedIn recently about recovered and recovering. And I said to someone, if you recover, what are you doing going to AA? And I've seen people when you are addicted to a substance, you've never got it beaten. You've only ever got it under control. And the people who have successful recoveries understand that. In 1957 in America, the American Medical Association diagnosed addiction as a disease. And I treat it as a disease. And if you've got a disease, no different from diabetes. If you've got to have a shot of insulin every day, well, you have it. And I've got my own drill that I do, and I do it pretty religiously. I mean, not fanatically, but I'm pretty careful, and it's worked. And so it's very important to work out what you're going to do if you've got an addiction, and abstinence is your pathway forward. And one of the big dangers I see all the time is you get well physically very quickly. Every client I get, I warn them, 3 weeks from now, you're going to be feeling terrific. First danger time. As soon as you feel good, you think, I've got this under control now. I'm right. Nothing can be further from the truth. You have to change the way you're thinking. You've got to reset your thinking.
What are some of the types of different addictions that come into 21 Renew?
The main one at the moment is cocaine and alcohol, or just cocaine. But generally, if you're on cocaine, you're having alcohol to level, because one's an up and one's a downer.
Right.
Will level out. Not as much ice as there was 3 or 4 years ago. Marijuana, a little bit. Alcohol's the main one. I would think out of the 16 or 17 clients I've got at the moment on the one-on-one sessions, there'd probably only be 1 or 2 that didn't have an issue with alcohol.
You're listening to Wellbeing, where we are discussing drug addiction recovery. My guest today is Graeme Alford, founder of Addiction Recovery Centre 21 Renew. Do you have to approach the different addictions differently, or is it pretty much the same kind of approach?
Ice, alcohol and cocaine, very similar. Heroin, as I said, is very different. Marijuana, marijuana is probably in that bucket. No, the detox phase is making sure that they have, if they need medication, that you arrange it with their doctor. So I would speak to their doctor and say, look, I think this is what he or she needs. Generally, they agree with me. And it's not a long-term, 2 months plan coming off Valium or anything like that. We might use Valium 5 ml 2 or 3 times a day, a couple of times, whatever, but reducing it fairly quickly, because it's just to get them through that first 4 or 5 days when they're really anxious and fidgety and suffering from the physical withdrawals, just to keep them level-headed, and getting them exercising and getting them in the swimming pool and hot and cold showers, and we do all sorts of things to liven them up quickly.
What are some of the symptoms that people can experience while in recovery?
Well, you've got the physical side, which if they do what you ask them to do, and I had a client recently who was borderline needing a medical detox, and I spoke to his doctor, and we agreed we'd try it at home because he didn't want to do a medical detox. It took him maybe 4 to 5 days. Didn't sleep that well the first couple of days. Had hot and cold sweats, but he was having 3 or 4 showers, and he's walking, he's doing everything I asked him to do, plenty of sugar. And by day 5, he was looking and sounding really well. So, but the general symptoms for alcohol are you can't sleep the first few nights, you're restless, you're anxious, and that's why the sugar helps immensely, getting plenty of sugar in them. With ice, you feel really lackadaisical and don't want to do anything for 3 or 4 days. But then, as long as they're eating and doing the things you ask them to do, and maybe using some Valium, next minute, bang, they're up and about. It doesn't take long, though. You wouldn't think so, but ice is almost the quickest one to bring them off in terms of symptoms.
You mentioned the sugar withdrawals there. Is that in the traditional recovery sector? Are they on top of that too?
No, they won't use it. If you go into any of the rehabs here in Melbourne or Australia, I don't know about overseas, you're not allowed any sugar. You're not allowed coffee.
Right.
To me, it's just the dumbest thing of all time. But no sugar, no chocolate, no coffee. It's crazy.
With where the institutions in their current way of operating, how well are they really doing in approaching recovery? Not well. I mean, they'll tell you differently, but you often get asked, well, what's your success rate? And so it's impossible to measure, because
you're not comparing green apples to green apples. You know, if you've got a rehab treatment facility here in Melbourne with 20 people in, you could have a 60-year-old male who's been drinking for 40 years. You could have a 25-year-old ice addict. You could have a 35-year-old female who's using cocaine. You could have 2 or 3 people on bail and they've been remanded to a treatment centre instead of prison. You could have someone who's got really supportive family to go back to. You could have someone who's living by themselves in an apartment. So they get out of the facility, go back into the apartment, look at 4 walls, and next minute they're drinking or using again. So there's so many different factors that you can never compare. You could never say, well, we had 20 through the last month and 15 have completed or whatever. It just doesn't work.
Right.
And the other thing too is 90% of people on an abstinence-based recovery path will relapse 1 or more times. So if they have a relapse, is that failure? If they have 2 relapses, is that failure? If in the first 3 months do they have 5 relapses, but after the first 12 months they're good and away they go, is that success? So, I mean, I would think in the last 3 or 4 years in the one-on-one non-residential program, I've probably 80-odd% of them would have had 1 or more relapses. But I treat a relapse as a learning curve. What happened? Why did it happen? When did it happen? What did we learn from it? And what do we need to do going forward to protect you from that happening again for that reason? When you look at it that way and they trust you, they get back on board. You know, I'll give you an example. I had a lady last year who was spending $5,000 a week on cocaine. She owned her own business. And she started in June. And between June and December, she would have had 10 or 12 relapses every couple of weeks. And she kept going and we kept working with her. From January the 2nd this year, she hasn't touched it. She doubled the size of her business. Family's back. Everyone's happy. She's firing on all 4 cylinders. Now, if you had taken a measurement in December of last year, you would have said, George, you're complete failure. But if you look now, 12, 18 months on, it's an outstanding success. So it's impossible to measure success. So coming back to your question, the biggest problem with the treatments facilities at the moment is it's a one-size-fits-all model. There's no differentiation in the program. What happens on Tuesdays happens on Tuesdays. Where you have a customised program built for each person, while you might use group activities as they progress, but you can look at them individually and see what they need. I'll give you another example. I had a lady start 10 days ago, really talented, creative lady in the film industry. Her confidence and self-esteem were rock bottom. So when I was doing the assessment, I just wrote down the first thing I need to do is build her confidence and self-esteem. Towards the end of last week, which was week 1, I got her to go through her CV and start sending out some emails. She rang me this morning to say she's had 2 job offers. Now, in a group setting, one size fits all, that wouldn't have happened. And so if you don't identify what each client needs at the very front end, then you run the risk of not getting them. But if you can get them early and understand exactly what they need right now, some people, we just need to get them off it. So that's what we do. So with her, yes, we had to get her off it, but I knew if I built up her confidence and self-esteem quickly, she would get a full head of steam and away she'd go.
How well do you think, in its current understanding, does society understand addiction?
Oh, they don't. And that goes for a lot of people in the treatment industry as well. One of the things that I talk about with families, and it's very hard, especially for wives where their husbands have been in full flight on the grog or the gear, they get very, very upset and angry with their husband's behaviour or their wife's behaviour the other way. And you try to explain to them, that's not your husband or that's not your wife. That's where the alcohol or the drugs took them and took over. So the behaviour is as a result of their drug or alcohol use. Now, that doesn't excuse it, and they have to accept responsibility for everything they've done. But if you understand that's not the person you married or you started living with, that's a person who's now alcohol or drugs are controlling their behaviour. Once we get rid of that, then we get back the person that you knew. Now, some partners readily accept that very quickly. Other partners, they've got a lot of anger and they've been hurt. And I've got 2 or 3 clients at the moment who have, they're just trying to put the marriage and the relationship back together again. And it takes time because partners have seen this all before and they've got their hopes up and you've relapsed. And they get their hopes up again and then you've relapsed. So now they're very, very careful about getting their hopes up and dropping the barrier for fear of being hurt again. And, you know, if there's kids in the relationship, then their major concerns the welfare of the kids as well.
Is it hard to ask for help?
Yeah, it is. There's embarrassment, shame, all those things factor in. How did my life finish like this? Males, their ego or their pride can get in the way. I found it very difficult. I was brought up to believe that real men solve their own problems. Real men don't ask for help. Suck it up, sunshine, you know, tough it out, do all that. And the day I put my hand up, back in 1984, this guy came into an AA meeting at Bendigo Prison where I was. He spoke. I sat there glued to the seat, and a couple of weeks later I asked him to be my sponsor in AA, and he said yes, and my life changed. For the first time I put my hand up and said, you know what, I'm not that smart. I need help. If you've got a substance issue or an addiction issue, it's almost impossible to beat it by yourself. You need help.
You're listening to Wellbeing, where we are discussing drug addiction recovery. My guest today is Graeme Alford, founder of Addiction Recovery Centre 21 Renew. What is the attitude that someone needs to have when they're first trying to undertake the recovery?
Look, it varies from client to client, depending on, you know, why they've come through the door. But if you wanted to look for a common sort of denominator, there's a great saying in AA: if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, then it's time to do something about it. And you know, if your life's falling apart, or you don't feel like you're getting where you should be going in your life, that alcohol or drugs are holding you back, which almost certainly they will be, then it's time to do something about it.
What is the environment that 21 Renew tries to curate for its clients?
Yeah, good question. It's built on trust, one-on-one, understanding each client's issues and their family. We provide family support. So my partner Ray looks after the families, because once I take a client on, if it's a one-on-one with me, that's purely confidential and private. It's understanding that the person you're talking to has been there and done that. Almost every client I get have been to see other people, and what they like about me is that, you know, I've done it. You know? I've been where they've been, so I understand how they think and I understand how they feel, and that makes a huge difference. And I have a lot of business clients as well, so having a business background also helps immensely, because once we get cracking, half the sessions we're talking about their business and how it's being affected and what they're doing and whatever. So that helps. But I think the number one thing, and it's not, look, there are some people out there in this industry who aren't in recovery themselves who are very good. But as a rule of thumb, you need to have been in recovery yourself for a fair period of time if you're going to get involved in working with people. I mean, I hear people who've been 4 or 5 years around in recovery and they just haven't got the experience to deal with the issues. So that when clients walk through the door, they want to feel like you know what you're talking about and you can show them a path going forward that'll work.
How can family members and friends effectively help the person that has the addiction?
That's the $64 question. Look, there's several things. There is a thing called what we call an intervention. If it's done properly, they can be quite good, but it's got to be done properly by a professional. often a wake-up call. If you don't get help, the marriage is over. That really does catapult partners into action. It can be a work situation where fellow partners in the business or whoever says, look, the job's on the line. Go and get help. We'll give you the time off. We'll pay for it, whatever. But you're not coming back until you get help. And sometimes it can be just planting the seed. Probably 80% of the phone calls we get are not from the person with the issue, but their loved one. What do we do and how do we do it? So one of the things I often do is I'll send him a copy of one of my books, Never Give Up. I'll say, tell them to read this, which is my life story. And so they read it and they get a degree of confidence. Well, you know, this guy's been to the grill and back, be worth talking to. And I never put any pressure on anyone at the beginning. I say, I want you to go away and think about it. This is how I see it would work for you. If you want to do it, ring me back. I don't want to get them to commit there and then I want them to think about it because they really have to want to do it. They don't really want to do it. It's not going to work.
What would be the take home from this interview you'd want people to remember the most?
Put your hand up. If alcohol or drugs are costing you more than money, if they're interfering with your work or your life or your relationship, or you feel like you're not getting the best out of yourself or it's holding you back, put your hand up now. I've got a saying, if you stay on the train, only finishes one of three ways: jail, cemetery, or mental asylum. Now, there's plenty of stops along the way. Got thrown out of home, got divorced, next stop, lost my job, next stop, I'm living by myself, next stop, I'm in a police station, next stop, I've lost my licence for drink driving. You know, all these stops occur. Now, if you don't get off the train and keep going, it doesn't finish well. It never finishes well. And don't try and fix it yourself because you can't.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your insight with us today, Graeme. We appreciate you taking the time.
Pleasure. All the best, Jack.
My guest today was Graeme Alford, founder of the Addiction Recovery Centre 21 Renew. Thank you for listening. I'm Jack Hodgins, and all of us at Wellbeing wish you well.